For this video, we're going to be discussing the properties of operations. Now, these properties are probably things that you've seen before, and we're going back over them to review because this year we're going to be using these properties to justify our steps when we simplify operations and when we solve equations. So let's go ahead and get started with the first property we're going to talk about, which is the commutative property. So the commutative property is all about ordering. It says that the change in the order of the numbers does not affect the answer. So for example, 6 plus 1 and 1 plus 6, those both equal 7. It doesn't make a difference that I do 6 plus 1 or 1 plus 6. The order makes no difference at all. By the same idea, I could say like 8 times 2 equals 2 times 8. They both equal 16. The order makes no difference. Commutative property is all about order. Now the thing to remember is this is true for adding, and it's true for multiplying, but it is not true for subtracting or dividing. Order does matter for subtracting and dividing, so only when we add and multiply can we use the commutative property. Now I want you to take a look at this example here. 9 plus 8 plus 7 equals 9 plus 7 plus 8. A lot of people get confused because when they see parentheses, they immediately think associative property. But if we look, this is a change in the order of the numbers. I did 8 plus 7, and here I did 7 plus 8. It is not a change in the grouping. All right? If it was a change in the grouping, then we'd be talking the associative property. But because it's a change in the order, we're talking about the commutative property. All right, speaking of the associative property, that is our next property. And the key word here is associate. Associate means you associate with groups of friends at school. All right, it's how you're grouping. That's all it means. Associate means to group. So, sometimes you change your grouping of friends, but you're all still friends. Maybe you and one person are hanging out one day, and then you and a different person hang out the next day. You're still all friends, you're just changing how you group. Well, same thing works with our operations. It doesn't matter how we group our numbers, we still get the same answer. So in this example, I've got 8 plus 9 plus 4, and here I've got 8 plus 9 plus 4. If I work these out, 9 plus 4, that's 13. And 13 plus 8, that's 21. And on this side, 8 plus 9, that's 17, plus 4, still 21. Doesn't make a difference that I grouped these two or I grouped these two. All right? But same idea, that works for multiplication. Just like the commutative property, though, this does not work for division or subtraction. It only works for multiplying and dividing. Does not work for adding or for subtraction or division. So associate is about grouping. Commutative is about ordering. All right, let's talk about our third property, which is the identity property. If you think about your own identity, your identity is unique. When you look in the mirror, it's what you see yourself. So when we think about identity in operations, it's something that we can combine with a number that will not change it. So there are two different identities. There's the additive identity, which is 0, and the multiplicative identity, which is 1. Because anytime I add 0 to a number, the number doesn't change. Anytime I multiply 1 by a number, the number doesn't change. So identity is a number that I can combine with another number and not change it. All right? Additive identity is 0, multiplicative identity is 1. Next up, we have the inverse property. And inverse just means opposite. All right? And inverse is a number we combine with another number to get the identity. So there are two different inverses for a number. There's the additive inverse, and once again, there's the multiplicative inverse. The additive inverse is just the opposite of it. So -2 and +2 are inverses because they add to 0. Okay? A positive number, if I said a, its inverse is just the negative version, -a. The same idea, a negative number, say -b, its inverse is just the positive version of that number, and I still get 0. So the additive inverse is just the opposite of the number. The multiplicative inverse is what's called a reciprocal. And it's just if I took the fraction and flipped it. So for example, 1/2 times 2 equals 1. 1 is the identity. So the inverse of a number under multiplication is the number you multiply by that number to get 1. And all we're doing is we're flipping the fraction. If we think here we've got 1/2 times 2 as a fraction is just 2 over 1. All right, well, if we do this multiplying, 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. Same idea here, look at 3/4 and 4/3. 3/4 times 4/3. 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 3 is also 12. And 12 divided by 12 is 1. So the multiplicative inverse is a number you multiply by another number to get 1. And our final not our final property, I'm sorry, I skipped one. Next property is the multiplicative property of 0. And this only works for multiplying. Only works for multiplying. And it's very simple. It says that any number times 0 equals 0. So like 5 times 0 equals 0, m times 0 equals 0, 1,000 times 0 equals 0. Any number times 0 equals 0. And finally, our last property is the distributive property. And the key word is distribute. And that simply means to give out. All right? So what happens is anytime I see a number outside the parentheses like this, and there's some sort of operation going on inside of the parentheses, I'm going to multiply this number by both numbers that are inside the parentheses. We're distributing. We're giving this 5 out to each. So like 5 times 4 plus 6 is the same thing as saying 5 times 4 plus 5 times 6. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 6 is 30. And 20 plus 30 equals 50. Now if we combine these in here, we'd see that we've got 5 times 10, which is also 50. So all we're doing is we're handing out that 5. If I look here, a times b plus c, well, we don't know what any of these numbers are. All we have are variables. But we're still going to multiply them. So I've got ab, a times b, and then a plus ac, a times c. Because I don't know what any of these numbers are, I'm done. I can't really do anything. I've just got ab and ac. Finally, our last example here, if I do 7 times a, that's just 7a, and 7 times b, that's 7b. And I'm adding them together, but because I don't know what a is and I don't know what b is, I can't really do anything, and that's just my final answer. So the distributive property is simply to distribute, to hand out the multiplication of the number outside the parentheses to every number inside the parentheses. So you have 5 try-it problems today. And all you need to do is label each one of these problems as being an example of the commutative, associative, distributive, identity, inverse, or 0 property. So all you need to do is tell me what property is being shown in each one of these equations. Let's do that and bring it in with your notes tomorrow.